Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for this electric vehicle charging workshop. So welcome to the second workshop in Acterra's Green at Home Charging series. Electric vehicle charging, steps to electrify your home. You can visit the website at acterra.org/charging. Please check out all of our social medias where you can stay up to date with our current events. We are on all of them: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Also, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter where you can receive weekly updates about events that help benefit you. I'm Brianna. I'm the Beneficial Electrification Associate at Acterra. Some best practices for Zoom is to please stay muted unless you are speaking. This workshop is also being recorded as well. You may leave your camera on or off, completely up to you. Please ask questions in the chat. We're going to have a Q&A portion at the end of the guest speakers' presentations. We won't be able to get to your questions as frequently during the chat as the presenters will be speaking, but there is a generous portion of the workshop that will be dedicated to answering your questions. If we're not able to get to everyone's questions, we will follow up with an email, or you can also email me whenever as well. If you would like, please feel welcome to introduce yourself in the chat so we can bounce off ideas with each other and get to know one another, learn from each other as well. A little bit about Acterra. We're an environmental nonprofit located in Palo Alto, but we service the San Francisco Bay Area. We were founded in 1970. Our mission is to bring people together to create local solutions for a healthy planet. And our focus is to address climate change with a priority on equity. A huge special thanks to our presenting sponsor, City of Palo Alto Utilities. They will be joining us at the end of the workshop, Hiromi, who I'll introduce in a quick second. We are collaborating with Willow Glen Electric, who is our guest speaker today, and EV experts.
Or one and the same.
So our guest speaker, Matt Londre, he's the guest speaker who will be presenting the bulk of information today. He's the president of Willow Glen Electric, and he founded the local EV experts. You can check out the websites at www.willowglenelectric.com and www.evexperts.com. His company has installed over 5,000 electric vehicle chargers in the larger Silicon Valley area. And then Hiromi, she's the utilities manager with the City of Palo Alto Utilities. She is a renewable energy enthusiast, and she has a passion for the implementation and adoption of electric vehicles. You may check out the website at www.cityofpaloalto.org/EV. And with that, Matt, I will let you take it away.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. This first little map right here is a location of many of the EV installations that we've done. Every dot on there represents a family happily charging safely at their house, thanks to our company's work over the years. We've been putting in EV chargers since about 2012, 2013. And like Brenda said, we've got 5,000 plus home chargers ranging from San Francisco out to Modesto, down to Gilroy, or to Santa Cruz, and kind of everywhere in between. So we're working real hard to do good safe home chargers. And we have partnered up with Q-Merit, and Q-Merit is the leading home electrification specialist in the country. And they have signed contracts and partnerships with pretty much every non-Tesla electric vehicle manufacturer in the country, from the new upstarts, Lucid, Rivian, Polestar, to the industry heavyweights, Chevrolet, Volkswagen, GM, Jaguar, Mercedes, Porsche, all the fun ones. So it's a pretty fun partnership that we have. I was actually out in Detroit a couple of months ago helping with their rollout of their latest Bolt charger. And there are many benefits to driving electric. Kind of starting from the top left, it's an enjoyable driving experience. They're quiet, they're fast, they're convenient, and they're super safe. They have much lower maintenance costs. I've got about 80,000 miles on my Model 3, and I've had to replace the tires, I think, once or twice, and that's really about the only maintenance that I've done on the vehicle. There's a lot fewer moving parts in there, and regenerative braking also helps reduce brake changes. So I'm not sure that I'll honestly ever really have to replace the brakes in my car. Zero emission, and electric vehicles have zero emissions when fueled from renewable energy sources. And if you're in the city of Palo Alto, they can actually provide clean power without needing to install solar power at your house. Typically, there's a lower fuel cost, depending on when and where and how you charge. But electricity is almost always significantly lower than gas and lower than the alternative. And there's also some nice benefits like HOV lane stickers. They're good for typically about 4 years or so. No renewal, unfortunately, but it really helps save you time. So for an electric vehicle, kind of the fuel costs for them, the typical electric vehicle gets about 3 miles of driving range per kilowatt hour of energy. That varies. It could range from 200 kilowatt hour or 200 watt hours per mile up to 450 or so watt hours per mile. The typical PG&E rate is about 30 cents a kilowatt hour overall. So that equates to about 10 cents a mile. But if you're charging at night on their time of use rate, which is what typically actually about the same price as Palo Alto utility rates, you're only paying about 6 cents a mile to drive your vehicle. And if you're charging off solar power, which can be even cheaper than your house overall, honestly, it can get as low as 3 cents a mile to fuel your car, which is insanely low. And it makes perfect sense. For public charging, they typically would charge anywhere from 20 to 50 cents a mile. So it's going to cost more, but it can be convenient to have public charging out there. And we compare that to driving an ICE car, which if you see an ICE thrown around, ICE stands for internal combustion engine. And for those cars, they get a national average of about 25 miles per gallon on average. And with the latest rate of about 440 per gallon, that's about 18 cents a mile. So way, way, way less costly to charge your vehicle. And EV mileage is affected by many things. It's affected by the temperature outside. So if you're running the heater in the car, that can use actually a lot of power, or the air conditioner. Speeding is not great for your range. Highway mileage compared to a gas car, the ICE car, will actually have better efficiency on freeways, while electric vehicles actually get lower efficiency on the freeway. Aerodynamics play a huge part in them, which is why typically most electric vehicle manufacturers are working real hard to be as aerodynamic as possible. This picture below is the newly almost released Lucid Air vehicle, which is supposed to be one of the most aerodynamic cars ever released. And honestly, one of the biggest items that goes into the EV mileage is your lead foot. If you're driving fast, you're going to be using a ton of power. Now, again, with my almost 80,000 miles on my Model 3, it's almost more fun these days to see how efficient I can be. Last week, one day, I drove about 100 miles and I turned off my air. It was a relatively mild day, but I turned off my AC and managed to get less than 200 watt hours per mile for my efficiency, which is pretty good. So that was fun to work on. And there are 3 levels of home charging. You've got level 1, level 2, and level 3. Typically, everybody seems to have a different definition of what the different levels are. But I think a kind of fairly simple back of the envelope, a good way to remember this: level 1 charges off 120 volt power at your house. Level 2 would be charging off 240 volt power, and level 3 would be charging off 40 volt power in public that you can't get at home. That would only be for public charging. But for level 1, almost every electric vehicle that I know of comes at least with a standard 120 volt level 1 charger. And this can plug into almost any grounded 120 volt receptacle in your house. If you have a 2-prong receptacle, it's not going to work, unfortunately. But if you have a good 3-prong receptacle with a good ground, that will work, and it will provide about 1.5 kilowatts of power for your vehicle. And this equates to about 2.5 or about 2 to 5 miles of driving range per hour of charge, which doesn't sound like a lot. And honestly, it's not a lot of power. But if you charge your car 10 hours overnight off just a generic plug in your garage, that could still get you 20 to 50 miles of driving range, which honestly is greater than the average daily commute. So it doesn't get you a lot more power than that, but it really can work. When I had my Model 3, for the first 10 months or so that I had it, actually, I lived in a 4-plex in San Jose where I could not put in a fast level 2 charger. So I charged off a 120 volt receptacle just like that. And like I said, it wasn't speedy by any means, but it worked. And it really can work for charging. And for level 2, some electric vehicles will come with a compatible level 2 charger. Every Tesla comes with a dual voltage charger that can plug into either a 120 volt receptacle or a 240 volt 50 amp receptacle. The new Chevy Bolt EUV actually comes with a dual voltage charger as well. So you could ask your dealer if it comes with a compatible charger. Level 2 chargers are typically going to be hardwired or plug-in, and we actually recommend almost every level 2 charger to be hardwired these days. Plug-in chargers now require GFI protection in a house, which is troublesome. If you, I won't get into it now, but hardwired is definitely the preferred way to go for a home charger. And these level 2 chargers do require a dedicated 240 volt circuit, which is good. And for the charging speed for these, I know sometimes people think that a level 2 charger is really just kind of one charging speed, while it actually is a broad range of speeds. So again, with the level 2 definition that I use, it being any 240 volt receptacle, the 240 volt receptacle might be 15 amps, 20 amps, 30, 40, 50, 60 amps of power or so. And for the amount of power that you get for that, you can see with that 15 amp 240 volt receptacle underneath the kilowatt column, that gets you at 2.8 kilowatts of power, so about 2.8 kilowatt hours of energy per hour of charge, or about 5 to 11 miles of driving range per hour of charge, all the way up to a 60 amp circuit that would be providing about 11.5 kilowatt hours of energy, which provides 22 to 44 miles per hour of charge. Now for that 60 amp circuit right there, the 44 miles per hour is basically what a Model 3 would get. And the significantly less efficient, but still way more efficient than gas car, 22 miles per hour would be for like the new Rivian R1T electric truck. Trucks obviously don't get as good of mileage as smaller sedans. So I'm actually impressed that it even gets half the mileage that a Model 3 would get. And for level 3, this is the fastest charging method. And this could actually get you upwards of 1,000 plus miles of range per hour of charge, briefly. Now that's if your car has, it's down to maybe 5 or 6 miles of driving range left on there, and you just barely pull into the public supercharger, which I've done before with my Model 3 going to the newest kind of version 3 superchargers, and I'll see upwards of 1,000 plus miles per hour for a couple of minutes before it kind of slows down as the battery fills up.
What?
And these chargers can provide upwards of 80% of charge in just 20 to 30 minutes, which is really, really fast. But a lot of older electric vehicles do not support level 3 charging. Now, again, a special 40 volt utility connection is required for these level 3 chargers, or 270 to 740 volt, voltage that most homes do not have. So if you're, we get calls occasionally from customers saying, I want a level 3 charger in my house. And we smile and say, that is not really possible. So don't ask your electrician for a level 3 charger. It can't be done. Now, if you were to only charge your car using level 3 charging, that could decrease your battery life overall. So ideally, you would not charge your car, only off level 3 superchargers, but you have a combination of level 2, level 1, and level 3. And these level 3 chargers use various connections. Over on the left side in that green column, you can see kind of the SAE combo receptacle, plug, which is the C standard, and it's the CHAdeMO standard, there's the Tesla standard. So you want to make sure that you know which fast level 3 charger your car is compatible with. And there are some awesome public charging networks around the country, including ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, and Tesla. Like the Tesla V3 supercharger that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that will provide upwards of 250 kilowatts or 250,000 watts of power at the peak, which is insanely fast. And Electrify America somehow can provide upwards of 350,000 watts of power, or 350 kilowatts. Next slide to show kind of what that equates to. So here's a picture of the Electrify America charging station. There's a picture of the Tesla supercharger station. That's down off I-5. I was actually in the, if you're ever in the Valley Fair Mall in San Jose, there is a Lucid showroom down there where you can see the Lucid Air that's coming out soon. Really cool looking car. And I happened to wander in there their opening weekend, and the CEO was actually in there. And one way or another, I was introduced to him. And he told me a story of actually using one of the Electrify America chargers with one of their Lucid Air prototypes up in Livermore, where they actually have one of the fastest chargers in America. And he said when they plugged their Lucid Air into that charger, they actually got a call from Electrify America within about 5 minutes, congratulating them on actually getting their car over there, because Electrify America knew that there were 0 compatible cars in America except for 1 or 2 prototypes that they had. So they're pretty thrilled to see that 350 kilowatts truly was possible for electric vehicle charging. And as an example of how fast this is, a good comparison, the 350 kilowatts or 350,000 watts is equivalent to powering 5,833 60-watt light bulbs. So those old inefficient 60-watt bulbs you've probably replaced taken out of your house right now because they're so inefficient. To charge your car, you're powering 5,800 of those bulbs. It's crazy the amount of power flowing in there. So for home charging, you want to keep track of how many miles you plan to drive per day. Now, the average commute in America is a 30-mile daily round trip commute. And with charging costs at an average of about 18 cents per kilowatt hour, using about 10 kilowatt hours of energy, that'll take you about 7 hours on the 120 volt level 1 charger, or about 1.5 hours on a level 2 charger, and costs less than $2 a day to charge your car, which is fantastic. And if you're going on a 200-mile road trip using close to 70 kilowatt hours of energy per hour charging, kilowatt hours, if you aren't aware, you can think of kilowatt hours as being like a gallon of electricity. Kind of water is the best analogy for electricity, and that's 67 gallons of electricity. That would take you about 45 hours to fill up, or almost 2 days for a road trip with your level 1 charger, which is why you definitely would not want a level 1 charger for road trips, or still less than 10 hours overnight on a level 2 charger. Although I actually did drive my Model 3 to Tahoe a couple of years ago and plugged into a 120 volt receptacle for the weekend, and I left it plugged in all weekend, and by the time we left, I had enough mileage to get back home after that. And that will only cost about $12 to charge your car for the 200-mile road trip, which is, again, fantastic. And installing a home level 2 charger is what our company does all day, every day, 5,000 plus home chargers. And the first thing that we do is to do an electrical load calculation to determine the safe charging speed in the house. All customers always want the fastest charger possible. It's not always possible to get a really fast charger in a house, but we will determine we'll help determine the safe charging speed for the home. And then for the installation location of the charger, ideally it would be near the car's charge port. And that picture down there of that, the top of that car, is a little picture I took off the Tesla web's page, showing the ideal location for a Tesla charger around the car, where ideally you would not put it in the front, passenger's corner, because the charging cable is not long enough to stretch to the back charge port on there. Ideally, the charge port would be kind of right down there where that plug is. And then ideally, you'd hire an electrician to install the wiring and conduit and whatever else is needed for that. We've helped fix a number of very poorly installed chargers in the past, either from handymen or electricians who didn't know better. Like literally, I fixed chargers that were melted and blown up by people with not enough experience doing these things. And lastly, you definitely need to get the city permit and inspection for these chargers. Electric vehicle chargers will be the #1 user of electricity in your house. And not to scare you with the stuff, but like you saw that, they use a lot of power. And if anything is going to go wrong with your home's electrical system, if it was installed improperly, you want to make sure that you had a inspection on there, because if you were to go get make an insurance claim with your insurance company, they're going to want to make sure that your charger was installed properly. So having the permit inspection is like the cheapest form of insurance for your house. And last night, I analyzed how many or how fast the chargers are that we've been installing this year. And in 2021, so from January 1st until literally yesterday, it goes up to about 2% of the chargers that we've installed are in the 15 to 25 amp level 2 range. When I'm saying this to show you kind of what charging speed you can expect, again, because every single person who's reached out to us for home charging would love to have that 60 amp home charger. And most of the time, honestly, gosh, about 2/3 of the time, we have to tell them there's not quite enough space for 60 amps, but we can give you 50 amps or 40 or 30 or 50, 20 or 15. Really any level 2 charger is pretty good for home charging. About 35% have been that 60 amp ideal home charging speed. And not really much above 70 amps. Once upon a time, the Tesla handled the 100 amp circuit, and it just made for a lot of unhappy customers. With that, I was actually thrilled when they finally dropped that 100 amp charger because not many homes could actually actively support that. And it disappointed a lot of people when they found out that they could not get fastest home charging possible. And really the 100 amp charger in a house is not even really necessary. You know, it doesn't make a difference if your car finishes charging at 2 in the morning or 6 in the morning. Just as long as it's charged by the time you wake up in the morning, that's all anybody can ask for with that. Now there are many charging options available for home charging. There are, well, I'll actually start at the second bullet point. The Tesla charger, kind of there's Tesla chargers and then there's the universal chargers. Tesla chargers are fantastic. I honestly think it's one of the most affordable chargers on the market that only works with Teslas. So if you've got a Model 3 and you want to charge a Model Y and you know you're getting the Cybertruck in the future, Tesla charger would be perfect. But if you want to be ready for the future, ready for anything, ready to charge a family member's or a friend's car when they make a road trip up here from LA, a universal charger would be fantastic in there. And you can get those from ChargePoint, Wallbox, Bosch, Flow. Oh, there's a lot of car branded chargers, you know, from BMW, Mercedes, Rivian. They have their own branded chargers. Actually, for charging my Model 3, I use a Wallbox at my house. Every Tesla comes with a small little 6-inch long adapter to plug into the universal charger that then plugs into your car. And the 25-foot cord length is the longest allowed by the national code. So if you're hoping to charge more than 25 feet from the charger, it's part closer, ideally. Now, this slide is one I don't want to scare you with this, but last night I averaged out the average cost of our home EV charger installation so far this year from January 1st to 2021. And this takes into account the higher cost for material this year. Material cost, oh gosh, wire is 2 or 3 times the price that it was 2 years ago. So costs have risen dramatically. But the average electric vehicle installation in 2021 so far for us has been about $3,200. Now, a large percentage of that, you know, almost $1,000 would come off of that with the federal tax credits. And there are also lots of good rebates from local utilities and other organizations. But you can see that's a low of about $900 up to a high of almost $20,000. Now, don't worry, the $20,000 project is an anomaly. And that is a project that includes a significant amount of infrastructure upgrades, smart electrical panels, you know, 125 amp plus sub panel feeders, lots, you know, main panel replacements, lots and lots of work. And I didn't really feel like taking out too many of those projects. You could just know that that $3,200 is more than the average cost would be. That also includes the average permit cost, which has averaged out to about $260 this year. Oftentimes we will provide the EV charger for a customer. So if somebody needs a hardwired charger, we buy them by the dozen from Tesla and from Wallbox and from ChargePoint. And those costs are typically $500 to $700 for those EV chargers. And that $3,200 also includes all infrastructure upgrade costs that we've had to do, ranging from automatic load management devices for homes that could not handle a fast charge without the automatic device. It includes panel upgrades that involve utility coordination, lots of work and stucco patching and a lot of work, and even smart panels like the panel from span.io, which is a fantastic panel. And there's a picture of the span panel right there. There's some really cool things we can do. So I don't know, 3,000, but just for argument's sake, $3,200, that's the average cost of an installation. Next page. That is an investment in the environment, in your convenience, and in lower transportation costs. And it's kind of a comparison I like to make is how much would you spend for a private gas pump at your house that would provide gas for 70% off? You know, the average cost for gasoline right now is about $4.50 a gallon. And if somebody knocked on your front door and said, hey, I can install a private gas pump that'll, rather than having you pay $4.50 a gallon, you'll pay $1.30 or less per gallon. I mean, how much would you pay for that? For the convenience, for the cost savings, for everything about that, it would be invaluable. That's basically what we're doing in homes when we're installing good, safe, permitted, inspected home electric vehicle chargers. So there are lots of rebates and grants to offset the costs. There's a federal tax credit of 30% up to $1,000 off of the purchase and installation of the EV charger. It does not include the permitting or inspection costs, but that really helps a lot with that average cost. I think it's about $750 off federal tax credit, bring that down to $2,500 minus City of Palo Alto discounts, City of Santa Clara discounts and rebates. Again, single family homes in Santa Clara, you get $550 back from from Santa Clara if you install a plug-in charger, or up to $1,000 back if you install a hardwired charger. And in other cities, like a city of Alameda, get upwards of $800 back. And next one, upwards of $2,000 back through various income qualifying programs. So next slide. Here we go. So if you live in an apartment, all is not lost. We have actually installed lots of home EV chargers in multifamily dwellings. And thankfully, there's an assembly bill in California that that says that landlords actually must approve renters' requests to install chargers in multifamily dwellings, even if they do go against kind of the aesthetic requirements for the building. If the alternative would be either like not making it impossible to install the charger or making it prohibitively expensive to install the charger. So if like the difference is either a piece of conduit across the garage, visibly across the garage that typically the HOA would reject, they're legally required to agree to that in the house. Now the renter does have to pay for all the costs for that unless the landlord does agree to pay. And if you are in a rental situation, well, first off, tell your landlord that you want access to charging. Property owners do need to know that there's a growing demand for EVs and home charging stations. And actually a lot of landlords, maybe they won't pay for the entire installation themselves, but we've found a lot of landlords will subsidize part of it for you because it's actually a tax credit for them. It's a rental, it's an expense for their rental property. So they get some money back on their taxes, and it improves their property for future tenants. And it's just a good thing to do. So talk to your landlord. They can be more helpful than you think sometimes. And if you're in an apartment, there are some other options as well. There are smart outlets like this one from PlugShare or the orange plug. And these outlets will allow the landlord to charge each user for their individual charging sessions. Oftentimes these are level 1 chargers using 120-volt wiring. So it does provide a slow charge, and you would have to use the charger that comes with your car for that. But when you register or when you log into the charger, like the PlugShare with a little QR code, you scan that with your phone. That tells them that you are charging, so they can track how much electricity you are using in there. And as we saw earlier, 10 hours, 12 hours overnight off a 120-volt receptacle can actually provide a pretty meaningful charge. Next, those two receptacles right there are level 1, 120-volt, but I think those are out 20 amp receptacles that charge just a little bit faster for convenience. And there's also mobile charging as well. There's a picture of a startup called Spark Charge that aims to provide mobile charging services to residents who do not have access to permanent chargers. There's a lot of charging networks for public charging out there. There's Electrify America, which was made by Volkswagen in return for Dieselgate. So as bad as it was that they were polluting the environment with their diesels, at least they're trying to help a little bit with their with one of the best public charging networks in the US. And there's the Tesla Supercharging Network, which is fantastic. ChargePoint, EVgo. We have some pictures of these. Let's see. So it was fantastic charging networks. Next up, we'll talk about the car and charging apps on here. One of the most important apps to get would be the PlugShare app. That should be app number 1 that you get. There's a screen cap I made last night where you can open it up, find all the local charging stations. And you can also filter it by the charger type over there. So if you know that your car can handle the CHAdeMO, you can filter it to only see the CHAdeMO or only see the CCS plug or only see the Tesla Supercharger. Really good, convenient app, and also helps you find chargers that are working, where if a charger is not working, you can go to the app and record it as being broken so that other charger or other people needing charge don't go to that charger. So using public charging networks, you want to use the app to find the public charger. And a really important thing is to configure your car and apps and payment options before you need that first charge. So if you get your car, first thing you should do is download the ChargePoint app, download the PlugShare, download Electrify America, become members of those apps like ChargePoint on my phone. I have it registered into my wallet app. So I'm opening this up right now. And if I was to go to a ChargePoint charger at the mall, all I have to do is hold my phone up to the charger over there. This little RFID tag in here tags me in. It knows who I am, and it charges me for charging the car. Tesla Supercharging does not require that. Your car automatically is registered into the Tesla network for charging, and so they can charge you for electricity. And in the future, in the hopefully very, very immediate future, other chargers like the Electrify America charger will work like that. I was reading a review about the new Rivian R1T truck, and it will work like that with Electrify America, where as long as Rivian knows, because it's your car, who you are, what your credit card information is, as soon as you plug in the car, kind of digitally shakes the hand of the charger and they know who you are. But you do want to make sure that you have either the barcode scanner, your RFID card for registering in, or your phone app. And for charging options, typically we'll charge in California by the kilowatt hour, but in other states where you're not allowed to sell power like utility, they'll charge by the hour. And definitely look at the apps before you drive there. Not all public chargers will work properly. I watched a YouTube video recently comparing a 1,000-mile road trip in a Tesla, in a Mustang Mach-E, and in a gas car. And the Mustang Mach-E, unfortunately, the GPS in the car was leading them to broken chargers. So when they finally found out, okay, let's stop using the built-in charger or the built-in GPS map, and let's use the PlugShare app, it worked a lot better for finding working chargers. So road trips truly are an option in electric vehicles. My wife actually never thought she'd want to do road trips in the Model 3 before we got it. And I don't think we've gone on a road trip in our car since we got it 3 years ago. It works awesome. Very, very fast and convenient charging. For charging compatibility, there's the Tesla chargers, like we said. That is a proprietary network. If you've got the Chevy Bolt, you can't charge in a Tesla charger. But for many of the fast DC chargers like Electrify America, it won't work with your Tesla. So just make sure you go into the right charger that works with your car. Future capabilities, chargers will have a vehicle to grid option, like the Ford F-150 Lightning EV truck that's coming out will have vehicle to grid, where if you have the compatible bidirectional charger in your house, you can actually use your car to charge your car. You can use your car to charge your house and power your fridge and your modem and your TV and everything in there. The Lucid Air will do that, and lots of upcoming electric vehicles will offer vehicle to grid options on there. Pickup trucks are coming as well. There's a picture of the F-150 Lightning. There's the Rivian R1T in the upper right, and the Tesla Cybertruck on the bottom right. So pickup trucks are one of the most popular types of vehicles in America, and they are coming and they look fantastic. The R1T, the Rivian reviews are saying that it is one of the, if not the best pickup truck the reviewers have ever driven, it's one of the best trucks, period, out there. For PG&E rate plans, if you're not in Palo Alto, congratulations, you have pretty low cost electricity up there, but you don't have you do not have time of use rates, which is kind of nice that you don't have to manage that. If you're in PG&E territory, we do have time of use rates, and you definitely want to get on the EV rate plan. When I got my Model 3, first month, I forgot to switch time of use, and my energy went from like $60 a month to about $300 for that first month. And when I got over the shock of how much I had to pay for electricity, I jumped on the EV rate plan, and my bill went from $300 back down to about $90. It's only honestly paying about $30 or $40 more than I was paying before to charge my car, which was awesome. So make sure you're on the correct rate plan. I would recommend which one, but PG&E changes these all the time. They're really hard to keep track of. So it's going to be different next week than it is today. In conclusion, electric vehicles are no longer a gimmick. They're fantastic. We had a Fiat 500e back in the day that had about 90 miles of driving range, which was fantastic for an around town car. My mom drove it to San Francisco one time for a conference and was told it would be charged while she was in there. And when she came out at the end of the day, it was not charged. And it took her about 4 hours to come back to San Jose, which was not an enjoyable process for her. But the 90-mile range electric vehicles aren't really out there anymore. Now 200 miles is kind of baseline, and 200 miles is more than enough to be extremely useful. The benefits of driving electric are substantial: lower operating costs, better driving experience, best for the environment, and the inconveniences are rapidly disappearing. The long driving ranges are fantastic. The easy charging in public are awesome. Better charging networks, and there's a ton of vehicle choices these days. It's not just Tesla anymore. I love Tesla, but I'm thrilled to see the other manufacturers coming out as well. Rivian looks awesome. Lucid looks great. I've heard nothing but great things about the Mustang Mach-E. And there's just some really awesome options coming out soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was very informative for everyone. We have a lot of questions being fired in the chat. It is now, and we will visit them again during the Q&A portion after City of Palo Alto speaks, Hiromi. So let me get this presentation ready for you. Okay, Hiromi, you are free to take it away.
Well, thank you, Matt. That was awesome. I learned a few things as well. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for attending today. It's so exciting that so many people are interested in EVs and learning everything there is to learn about EV charging. My name is Hiromi Kelty. I work with the City of Palo Alto Utilities. I am a program manager that focuses on everything having to do with EVs. A lot of my attention is on getting as much infrastructure in the ground as possible to make the transition easy for our customers. Next slide. So when you look at Palo Alto, this is kind of what it looks like from greenhouse gas emissions. That big red section is about 65% of the pie, and that it represents the emissions coming from transportation, most of which is from road transportation. That big blue section is natural gas use. That is a whole nother topic, and I'm sure Acterra will do lots of classes on that as well. But tonight we're going to focus on that red section. We really need to reduce that to meet our climate goals for the sake of the planet, for the sake of the city, for the sake of the future, for our children and grandchildren. Palo Alto has some of the most aggressive carbon reduction goals in the country, 80% reduction from 1990 levels by 2030. To put that into perspective, that's about 20 years more aggressive than the state of California's goals. But we really have to chip away at that big red section. Next slide. The good news is Palo Altans have been adopting EVs pretty aggressively. We probably have the highest adoption rate in the country, now at 10%, which is very exciting. However, when you look at the breakdown, you could see that the majority of EVs are registered as single-family homes, which is that's great, but we really need to do what we can to help the multifamily sector adopt EVs as well as commercial fleets. And just to give you an idea, multifamily represents 42% of our households in Palo Alto. Matt covered the benefits of EVs, but charging in Palo Alto really makes a lot of sense. First of all, our electricity is carbon neutral. It has been since 2013, which means our electricity is coming from clean sources such as hydropower and solar, and our electricity rates are low. Matt was talking about the EV rate. The EV rate for PGE is 19 cents a kilowatt hour, and you have to charge during certain times of the day, like from 12 a.m. to 3 p.m., I think. Whereas in Palo Alto, the tier 2 rate, which is the rate most residents are on, especially if you have an EV, is 19.4 kilowatt hours. And that's charging at any time of the day. Next slide. So we have some rebates on both sides of the meter. In front of the meter means anything having to do with the grid. Behind the meter has to do with your site or your building. Next slide. So in front of the meter, we have a transformer upgrade rebate or discount. What that means is, when you're doing an EV charger installation, I'm sure Matt's company has run into this, sometimes there isn't enough electricity coming to that property. So we have a transformer rebate of up to $100,000 for nonprofits and multifamily properties. And for single family homes, this could happen too. So we are hoping to offset the cost of that by providing a $10,000 discount. Next slide. Our rebates, in 2017, we launched our EV charger rebate program. At the time, we decided to use the funds that we have available to support the harder to reach organizations and properties in our city. Instead of the money going to large corporations that already have the money to do it big installations, we really wanted to help nonprofits and schools and also multifamily properties. So, it's a maximum rebate of up to $80,000. The rebates come to $8,000 per connector or port, which I think is probably one of the highest rebates per port of anywhere in the country. So if you are involved with a place of worship, or your kids go to a school that doesn't have EV chargers, or if you're one of the 42% that live in a multifamily residence, please know that we have rebates to help get installations done. And then, of course, the transformer upgrades, which I just mentioned. Next slide. We also have a very unique program called EV Charging Technical Assistance Program, or EV TAP. This was launched because despite our rebates, our participation rate was not very high. And I think, a lot of property owners don't really want to do this unless they have to do it, or they want to do it, but they're not sure how to do it. And so we brought on a consultant, Clear Result, that really handholds property owners through the process. They will do everything from the site walks to take a look at the electrical equipment on site. They will do the load calculations, which are so crucial for determining what can and cannot be done with existing capacity. They'll design the layouts. They'll go over contract bids. They help with the permitting process, and they'll work with our development services team. They work with our engineers to take a look at the transformers, and they'll make sure the property gets rebates. Now, the customer that's eligible for this, again, is a multifamily, nonprofits, schools, and small, medium businesses. So if you know of any properties like this, please share this contact information. This service is free of charge to the customer. And I think it's an excellent way to help these customers get chargers installed for all of you. Next slide. Again, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. If you don't know, our sustainability office has been hosting community engagement sessions regarding our sustainability and climate action plan. If you go to cityofpaloalto.org/climate-action, there is a lot of information on how you can get involved. We would very much love to hear from all of you on what the city can do to support your transition to electric transportation. For our EV related programs and EV information, you could go to cityofpaloalto.org/EV. And we really do want to hear from you, because this is so important for our city and for our future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hiromi. And as well, thank you, Matt. This is now the Q&A portion of the webinar. I will be reading out from the chat. Bruce Bell will be helping us out with answering the questions alongside Matt. And if you have any questions for City of Palo Alto, Hiromi will be here to answer your questions. So the first question came in from Subod. The question is it possible to secure an EV home charger so that it can only work for a particular car?
Yes, it is, if you have the right charger. There's a couple of smart chargers these days, like one from Wallbox, where you can basically lock it out when you're not home. And when you come home, the Bluetooth in your phone unlocks it for charging. And other chargers, you can, if not register it to your car like that via Bluetooth, you can set them to charge on a schedule. So if somebody tries charging at 2 in the afternoon, they can't get any juice, but if you set it to start charging at 10 o'clock, after you know that you've already plugged in that evening, that would work that way as well. But I've not actually ever gotten any calls from customers saying, hey, we were having problems with people stealing power from my house. I don't think it's really too common of an issue, thankfully.
Thank you. Alex, I see that Ariane answered your question about hybrids. Thank you, Ariane. Ariane is part of Acterra's Carl Knapp Go EV program at Acterra. Let's see the next question. Why would a Tesla need to charge off a CHAdeMO charger with a converter when there are so many Tesla superchargers close by? CHAdeMO, I'm sorry.
Looks like Lawrence and Ariane said, when shopping at Whole Foods, for example, they often will have the CHAdeMO chargers, but they don't have Tesla chargers there. So it's convenience. But the CHAdeMO adapter also, I'm not sure if Tesla even sells it anymore, but it was like $500 or $1,000 for the adapter. So it's not something you really need. It's just a nice option for you.
And Lawrence 2019 Bolton Palo Alto, thank you for helping out with these questions I'm seeing in the chat. Next question, and Matt, if you see me skip over a question, please interrupt me to get that question answered. Greg, yes, these slides will be available to everyone as well as the chat box and a recording. All of the follow-up materials will be sent to you either by the end of the day tomorrow or the day preceding after that. So stay tuned for that. I will also be sending out a survey as well. Greg asked, what was the average cost for a single car level 2 charger installation?
Where was that lower? Here we
at 7:29 p.m.
Average cost for a single car level 2 charger installation. Again, that was the $3,200 ballpark range, but that also includes a lot of very expensive projects that are I would not expect to need at your house. On average, honestly, I think most are between the $2,000 and $3,000 range, and oftentimes that does include the charger itself, and we also include the city permit inspection. And there's a surprising amount of work on the back end of these installations to make sure they're being done properly and safely.
I want to also point out that for the city, chargers for level 2 chargers are over the counter. However, anything that is 50 amps and above, there's a review, and that usually takes longer. And like Matt said, do you really need something that's 50 amps and above? So that's something to think about as well.
Isn't it above 50 amps? I think 50 is like instantly approved, but the 60 amp would be.
Yeah, no, I was, when you were talking earlier, I was checking some notes from a conversation I recently had with development services in Palo Alto. And they said for less than or equal to 50 amps, it's over the counter review. And for greater than 50 amp chargers, it's a 14-day review.
Gotcha. And that's why in Palo Alto, we actually typically will recommend 50 amps. We just say, don't even bother with the 60. Let's just do 50.
Thank you, Hiromi. Alyssa asked, Matt, do you know if and when Tesla will open up their charging network to cars of other manufacturers? I have heard that they plan to do that at some point. Do you know when? Ariane said she believes Elon said by the end of this year. Do you know for certain, Matt?
I do not know. Yeah.
I guess we're waiting on Elon at this point.
Yeah. I was actually
I can comment on that. By the way, I'll introduce myself. I'm Bruce Bell. I'm just an enthusiastic EV owner. I volunteer with a group called Drive Clean Bay Area, and I have a focus on helping people in multi-unit developments get charging. The last thing I heard was that Elon was going to run normal chargers in someplace like Norway for a while. So I think it's going to be a long time before he rolls out his charging station here in America for regular chargers.
Thank you, Bruce. Also, a side note, I put the feedback form in the chat box. If you could please take the time to fill it out so that you can give us your input about this workshop. It would mean a lot to us. And thank you. Next question is, Mayan, I believe your question was answered. Thank you everyone for helping out with the chat box. Greg asked, will cities adjust solar installations to consider the future additional load of EV charging? And are installations at full value ratio 1-to-1 for the rated label no reduction? You can find this at 7:36 p.m. in the chat box.
Okay. The first part of the question, it's interesting. Our load overall has been reduced in recent years due to some data centers moving out. So all projections are showing that our city's existing electricity will be able to fuel EV adoption, aggressive EV adoption. So we're not worried about that, but we are more concerned about the individual transformers serving a lot of our property, which tend to be older. We have a lot of older building stock. So that's why we have this program to offer support when transformer upgrades may be necessary to install EV chargers and for electrification of buildings. And part two of the question, you said it was
7:36 p.m.
7:36 p.m.
Are installations at full value 1-to-1 ratio for the rated label no reduction?
Sorry, I'm not sure what that means.
I can explain a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
The code used to be, and I don't know if it's changed recently, but in 2019, if you put in an EV charger, there was no adjustment in the value, so that if you did your load calc, it was at 100%.
Yeah, I know. That has nothing to do with the city. That has to do with Matt. You tell me what the name of the organization is that decides that.
National Electrical Code.
At 100, yeah, at 100%. 100% of the time, even if the average person only uses their charger at home, maybe 10% of the time. And even at my own home, when we were trying to electrify everything, we didn't have enough electricity. And then we're like, well, there's got to be a way to make everything work with 200 amps. And the EV charger we rarely use. We charge our car up maybe once a week. But yeah, that is the rule. So, but the smart panel that Matt talked about is really an exciting product. SPAN. It's something that I've looked into for my own home. But yeah, I think that'll be a game changer.
Yeah, well,
it'll allow for like load shifting.
Yeah, the NEC, the electric code doesn't allow for that right now. And the challenge is that it often drives having to have a service upgrade.
So
and that gets expensive.
Yes, it does.
So the 1-to-1 ratio for that would be the circuit breaker size. So if it was a 60 amp, if you've got a 100 amp panel and somehow you've got enough power for the 60 amp EV charger, that takes up fully 60 amps, like your 100 amp service right there. It's actually 125% of the actual load. So that kind of reversing into it, if it's a 50 amp charger, it provides 80% of that gets to the car, so 40 amps. And then at 40 amp load, according to the code, you multiply by 125%, getting right back to the circuit breaker size of 50 in there. And I know it can be frustrating with that, but the electric vehicle is considered a continuous usage appliance, very similar to air conditioning in a house. And it actually makes a lot of sense. I've actually talked to some cities who were including the electric vehicle in their 40% derating number on there. I told them this doesn't make sense because now imagine you've got 200 amps for your house and you want, easiest comparison, 100 amp electric vehicle charger for the dual charger Tesla Model S. If you could actually take your electric vehicle charger derated to 40%, that means you could have 500 amp electric vehicle chargers coming out of that 200 amp electrical panel, drawing 400 amps of power, potentially, maybe only for 2 hours a week off of that, but potentially upwards of 400 amps coming through that 200 amp panel, which obviously would probably blow the transformer off the pole, would melt your electrical panel in minutes. Bad things would happen, which is why we need that to be included on there at 100%. Most of the appliances in the house can be derated way down, because we know that the loads are typically, 50 amp oven is using maybe 10 amps of power. 50 amp EV charger, it's using a lot of power for potentially a long time. We want to keep you safe.
Yeah, it's the difference between being continuous and intermittent.
Great question.
Thank you for asking that, Greg, and thank you for explaining Hiromi and Matt. Mary asked, do you recommend putting the charger inside the garage or on the driveway?
I recommend putting the charger near the garage door, whether inside, whether outside. It doesn't really make too much of a difference for me. Depends on where you're hoping to charge your car. You know, most standard residential garage doors have that little bit of kind of padding on the bottom that really can relatively safely close on top of a charging cable. But let's say your charger's inside the garage and you're parked outside overnight, you can close the garage door on the cable without there really being any issue. I did that with my charger every night with no issues. There are some fancy garage doors, you know, the solid wood, beautiful garage doors that are designed to perfectly fit on your opening, that are solid wood, almost like a guillotine, and you don't want to close that on top of your charging cable. So if you're planning to park outside, please have the charger outside with the solid door, with the solid wood door. If you're planning to park inside, maybe you're going to want a charger inside and outside, you know, doing a load sharing kind of thing to make sure that you're not crushing the cable on a nightly basis. But again, taking it one step back, we always recommend it near the garage door so that you can charge inside or outside. It always depresses me to no end to have somebody say, put it at the back of my garage, you know, far from the garage door, so that they can only charge inside their garage. They can never charge a friend's car when it comes over. Say they had to store something in their garage for the weekend, they're doing a woodworking project in the garage, they just gave up their charger for a week. And also with the Chevy Bolt, they actually say, you know, not to throw Chevy under the bus right now with this, but they specifically say, don't charge your car overnight. Don't charge your car inside. If you were that Bolt owner and you put the charger on the back wall of your garage, you're not charging at home anymore, according to Chevy's request for you. So.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, our EV charger is on the outside of the garage, and we've had it there for over 8 years now, and it works just fine. It's just a regular dryer outlet that's outside, and we plug in our charge cable, and it's worked great in the rain, and it's been fine.
Yeah, the electric, actually great. Sorry, not to interrupt too much, but the receptacle historically is the charger that I always loved to put in for customers. It was easy, it was simple, you could plug in any charger you want there. If your charger goes bad, unplug it, plug it in there, it works fantastic. But the National Electrical Code changed in 2020, which is the code that is applicable in California, or the 2017 code changed to require GFI protection for all plug-in electric vehicle chargers. Does not require GFI protection for hardwired EV chargers, because all EV chargers actually have GFI protection already built into it. And the issue with that is, and GFIs, those are those like the plugs in your kitchen, your bathroom, with that little test and reset button. And it makes it so that if you're taking a bath, you've got a blow dryer plugged into the receptacle on your wall, and the blow dryer dumps into your bath, you're not going to die because it will instantly trip the circuit right there, saving your life. So GFI protection is fantastic to have. But with electric vehicle charging, again, because every electric vehicle charger already has GFI protection built into it. If you've ever heard about somebody who plugs it into like an ungrounded receptacle and then the charger lights up red saying you can't charge here, and you look up the code reason, it says because there's no, you know, the red blinking light means there's no ground there. It knows there's no ground because the charger actually throws off a small ground fault into the circuit every time it wants to charge. And internally in the charger, if it trips, that's a good thing. That means that there's a good ground there on there, and then the charger then can start charging. However, if it throws off that small ground fault and there's a GFI circuit breaker protecting it, sometimes that GFI circuit breaker, because they're not talking together, will interpret that test as an actual ground fault, tripping the circuit breaker, causing you to not charge your car, and confusion and hassles. And it's not a fun code change. I understand why they did it, but it makes it so that basically we want to put hardwired chargers in everywhere for our customers now. It provides a much more convenient, reliable, and attractive charge in the house.
Thank you, Matt, for explaining that out for everyone, and Hiromi as well. I want to be respectful to everyone's time. We are at the hour, and I know there were some questions that we didn't get to, so please email me your questions. I put my email in the chat at Brianna, BriannaBrianna, Duarte, Duarte, at acterra.org. You can also, let me put it on the screen here. This email here, I want to get all of your questions answered. I will forward them to either Matt, Bruce, or Hiromi, whoever is to all of them, so that we can best answer your question.